Now I've got a big one, and I know what you're thinking. Well, how big can your server be? But it is essentially a full-size tower. It's got a massive CPU, 14 cores, 28 threads. It's got a graphics card. It's got a load of hard drives in it. And in reality, I'm not actually running that much of a Homelab. And this is kind of where the idea came from to use this laptop here. This laptop is from 2012, and it's got some incredible features that I kind of wanted to touch on in this video. I also wanted to show you kind of what I'm running on it, because I am running some very cool stuff on it. And you might be thinking, oh, he's just going to install Proxmox and set up VMs and LXC containers. But I'm actually not, so stay tuned. To me, what sets this laptop apart is some of the really, really cool features that it has, because you will not find most of them on any modern laptop from kind of 2017 onward. And the first cool feature that it has, it's got replaceable RAM. So in here, it runs DDR3 memory, DDR3L to be specific, and I've got 8 gig in it, which is going to be plenty for my use case. And the thing is, with laptops these days, you cannot replace a RAM on some of them. A lot of the times it tends to be soldered down for speed, so upgrading is not possible. But here I could potentially put in 2 8 gig sticks if I wanted to, just to have a little bit more freedom if I needed it. Now the other thing it has, and it might go without saying, is it has a keyboard and a display. So essentially I can just do all the operations I need from the screen without having to connect it to a monitor, or without having to carry a portable monitor or have a KVM ready. Now another cool thing with this laptop is that it has an Ethernet port, and again, not something that's common on most modern laptops. You most of the time have to use some kind of an adapter or some kind of a docking station, whereas with this, you plug the cable straight in. And I know this is maybe a really obvious one, but obviously you're going to get a much better connection using a cable rather than using Wi-Fi. Now the other obvious thing with this being a laptop is obviously that it has a uninterruptible power supply, and what that means is it's just got a battery. Now most laptops obviously came with a battery. This one's replaceable. It's from that era of laptops where laptops had replaceable batteries. I will be able to use this maybe on 10-15 minutes should I ever have a power cut. And the final thing I wanted to touch on with this laptop when it comes to its amazing features is obviously it has a replaceable hard drive. So I've just popped in a 120 gig SSD. I can pop it in. It's SATA 3. It's obviously not the fastest thing in the world, but it's going to be more than good enough for my Docker containers. And obviously that's pretty self-explanatory. But again, it's a replaceable hard drive. It doesn't have NVMEs because of the age of it, but it has one more trick up its sleeve. And most laptops from that era have a DVD drive. And if you don't know what a DVD is, you're obviously way too young. What you could do is, and this kind of came about with the MacBooks, and I can't remember which ones exactly, but they started introducing these caddies for the DVD drive. So essentially you can replace the DVD drive, keep the kind of fascia so it looks stock, but you get one of those adapters where you can pop in another hard drive. Now I've opted for 228 gig SSDs because that's what I had lying around, and I've installed the operating system in RAID 1 on this. But you could alternatively install the operating system on the single disk that you've got, and then use this adapter thing to have a much bigger 2.5-inch drive in here. So you could have a 4 terabyte drive in here. And this is a super common adapter that's out and about that you can purchase for next to nothing. And it just slots straight into the same slot as obviously your DVD drive, and you can even attach, as I said, the fascia to it. Now, one more thing that comes with this generation of laptops is something that is essentially unheard of these days, and that is that it has an upgradable CPU. Yes, it has a CPU that can be replaced. Now, this one here is an i3-3110M, so it's a 2-core, 4-thread CPU, plenty fast for my needs, but believe it or not, it's a 35 watt TDP. And I was checking some benchmarks for this CPU, and it's about a third of a N150, even a quarter of an N150, which is a 6 watt CPU. So it's obviously incredible to see how far, technology has advanced in like 12, 13 years, but you have the ability to swap it out. And I think you can go up as high as a 3940XM, I believe, which is a 4-core, 8-thread CPU with 55 watts. So if you wanted to, and you needed a bit more power, by all means, you can do that if you wanted to run VMs on this, for example. But for me, 2 cores, 4 threads is absolutely plenty. So now that we've kind of covered the specs of this laptop and kind of how amazing it is and kind of how it still stands up to this day when it comes to running it in your Homelab, let's now talk about the operating system, the thing that makes this kind of whole setup tick. And you might be thinking, again, Proxmox, you might also be thinking Debian, something like this, but I've actually gone away from kind of the standard or kind of the traditional Homelab user interfaces and desktop environments, and I've actually gone and installed Fedora OS. Now, there's a specific version which is Fedora Server, and there are a number of reasons why I've gone with Fedora Server. Number one, purely for the experimentation. As I said, most people doing home labs talk about Debian, Ubuntu, the traditional operating systems. No one really goes and installs Fedora, and I really, really like Fedora. I like that desktop environment, and also it helps that obviously Linus Torvalds is using it himself because he just likes it. If you've watched the Linus Tech Tips episode, he does talk about the fact that he uses Fedora. The cool thing with Fedora is it has one amazing feature, which I'm going to show you shortly, because I just really like the fact that it comes built in, and I just wanted to check it out and see how it actually performs. Now, obviously, as it comes with anything in my home lab, I've gone ahead and installed Tailscale. Tailscale for me is an absolute must because it just makes managing these devices so much easier. I can be out and about and I can install terminals or any terminal app and just SSH back home if I needed to do any troubleshooting. If my partner's having problems with internet, I can remote in and kind of make any necessary changes. And I absolutely love the fact that I can do Tailscale on it and just install it. It's super simple to install, but I've already done a video and I will link it down below if you're interested in finding out more. Now, I've also mentioned that I'm running Dockge on this because Dockge is just something that, in my opinion, you have to run. If you're not running LXC containers like I normally am, Dockge is obviously the next thing that I'm running, and I've installed Dockge, and I've also installed Portainer, and I'm also experimenting around with Dockge, I think it's called. It's also a super cool user interface, and if you've ever used Uptime Kuma, it's the same developer that's created Uptime Kuma has also created Dockge. Now, as I just mentioned, Uptime Kuma, I've installed that to monitor my home network because this is just ideal for this. It's a low power CPU, 35 watts, it's not loads, whereas if you think about the one that I'm running downstairs, my massive server, that's using 75 watts just to kind of sit at idle, which is, a massive difference. If I was to spin up a couple of VMs, it would easily reach 150 watts. Now, a super cool container that I came across recently is called Technitium DNS, and I'm just looking at my notes here. I think that's how it's pronounced. I never know how to pronounce it because I only came across it recently. I've not seen that much footage on it, but when you configure it, it's like AdGuard, but on steroids. It has so many incredible features. Now, the final thing that I wanted to touch on is why I've installed Fedora, because Fedora is not your typical choice. Most people, as I said, use NixOS, Debian, Ubuntu, Proxmox for anything like that. But Fedora has got something called Cockpit, and Cockpit is essentially a GUI that allows you to manage your Fedora instance from the cloud. Well, kind of from the cloud locally. So you essentially just go to the IP address, port 9090, you can then connect and you can do all the management stuff that you normally have to know how to do in the terminal and, open nano and kind of make configuration changes. You get a nice graphical user interface. I've just only started playing around with this, but you get user management, so you can create users on the fly. You get access to the file system. And what's super cool is you don't have to SSH into your Fedora instance anymore. You can literally upload files. So you can create a Docker compose file on your desktop and then essentially just connect to it, connect to Cockpit, and then upload that file into a location of choice. You can create folders as if you're just using the file explorer. Now, there's loads more. You can see the data usage, so you don't have to run HTOP or something like that. You can see how much the CPU is being stressed, how much memory is being used, and so much more. I'm just scratching the surface of Cockpit, but if you're interested in kind of, reconfiguring your home lab, highly recommend you check out Fedora Server because it has all these incredible features built in. Now, obviously, no setup is perfect. As much as I've been selling this thing here, no setup is perfect. It doesn't have any expandability when it comes to network cards. My server downstairs runs a 2.5 gig card. It runs a 10 gig card. So I have all the network speed that I need. Now, keep in mind, I'm running a 2 gig connection at home. So I can potentially utilize cloud services. And I'm essentially going to have a faster connection to the cloud services than I will to connect to this little laptop here. But what I wanted to show you is that you might have one of those laptops lying around that, your dad got home from work 10 years ago and he's just sitting there gathering dust. This is potentially a project that you could be attempting because it's got so many amazing features. It is that kind of an age where laptops were still upgradable to the point where you could essentially swap out everything, including the CPU. This runs completely silent. It just sits next to me. I honestly haven't even been able to tell that it is on, but I can do everything that I need to do on it without essentially running my massive server. And I am working on another video where I'm actually considering not running the server that I've got downstairs because I got it for an absolute bargain and there's loads of money to it. And I'd rather sell it, have someone else make full use of it rather than it just sitting in my house. What I want to know from you is, what would you do differently with this? Kind of how would you configure it? Because if you had something like this, you know, I've told you how I'd configure it. What's the OS you'd be running? Would you install something like NixOS, for example? Or how much RAM would you give it? So yeah, let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what you would do with such a thing and what you would run on this, because I've just gone kind of the comfortable route, which is just running, you know, Docker, and that's basically it. But yeah, let me know in the comments. But also don't forget to subscribe. I hope you've enjoyed this one and I look forward to seeing you in my next one.